All right, this is the PWI Podcast. I'm your host, PWI senior writer Al Castle, joined as always by my co-host Brian Solomon. How's it going?
It's going very well, Al. Happy to be here on a
Hey.
rainy December morning.
Yes, happy holidays. I see the stocking hanging behind you. I've got my annual WWE themed ugly sweater. This one's an AJ Styles one that used to belong to my kids.
Great.
How are you? And joining us for a holiday special holiday episode, special guest, fellow senior writer Harry Burkett. How's it going?
Wow, this seems like a three-way tradition at the end of the year. I don't have a stocking behind me, but I do have a rainy day behind me. So
it
there
is
we go.
awful outside. Yeah, I don't know if it is by your parts, but by me, it is just the proverbial cats and dogs. Yeah. Anyway, good to see you both here on what I expect will be the last podcast of the year, and it's been an eventful year. We're going to look back on some of it, also look ahead, and also touch on some key current events, not the least of which is John Cena's a final match. We finally got it. Fair to say, mixed reception from fans, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Also, I feel like every few weeks I'm talking about how I shouldn't be talking about politics on this, but it has its way of sticking its nose in the wrestling business. And with Mick Foley's announcement that he's cutting ties with WWE because of their affiliation with the president, it's caused a lot of stir, and I thought we'd talk a bit about that. Right now, let me tell you about, I don't have the latest issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated on me, but you might have seen it on the most recent episode of TNA Impact. TNA, I think, breaking the news. They're now former World Heavyweight Champion Mike Santana on the cover, and also this year's number one ranked tag team in the PWI Tag Team 100, the Hardy Boys. And I was part of the committee that put together that list. And, when I think Jason first suggested, Jason McVeigh, the Hardy Boys, and Kevin came to me sort of apologetic, like, well, I don't know how. And I thought, like, I totally agree. I mean, to me, it was something of a give me. And it is not to downplay the terrific year that the Hardys have, because I do think it was a really great year for them. But also I think it speaks to like not the deepest tag team wrestling scene right now. Harry, would you agree?
I do. And at first blush, it does seem like a surprising number one choice. Not so much a surprising nomination by Jason. But the more I think about it, and you look at the quality of matches they had, not only in TNA but NXT, I can see the reasoning.
Yeah, and they, I think, had 2 NXT tag team titles. Am I right? In the grading period, a TNA a tag title, or maybe it's 2 TNA tag titles and an NXT tag title. I forget which one of those other tag titles. And just it clearly now kind of in the twilight of their career, both guys. I think Matt's already past 50, and Jeff is getting there. I think he's like 49. But clearly they thought, like, let's kind of go back to our roots here, and they've spent the last year plus of their careers, after kind of having maybe not the greatest run in TNA, in AEW, got back together and really focused on tag teams. And it's been a pleasure to see, and the guys are in great shape. And when you hear them, I think that's the one thing that's been sort of the most rewarding to see, where the Hardys have, and maybe to their own benefit and other times to their own detriment, over the years gotten in some trouble, is maybe with some immaturity, both in the ring and out of the ring. And that speaks to them getting into the business when they were teenagers. But now guys who are, very much, older, wiser, you hear them, what you have now is that wisdom, right? And you hear that so much in wrestling, and that's been apparent in the way they carry themselves in the ring, out of the ring, the interviews. I mean, I feel like this is a grown-up version of the Hardys, who can still basically do, most of what they could do in the ring. So I think it's been a pleasure to watch. How about you, Brian?
Yeah, it has. And, these guys, it's interesting how they've always managed to reinvent themselves. I mean, I was there at WWE right after they really exploded, after that ladder match in 1999 with Edge and Christian, where they really were established. And the thing that always concerned people, I think, about them was that their whole act was based really on being young. You know what I mean? Like that was their whole thing. And it was always the concern was, well, how is there going to be longevity to this? And boy, did they prove everybody wrong. I mean, they're still going strong as a team. And it's like you said, their AEW thing was a bit of a disappointment. And look, that a lot of that is chalked up to Jeff. Let's call it the way it is. But it seems like now they've gotten their heads on straight for what I'm assuming is their last big run here. We should mention they had their last match with the Dudleys. That was, a big nostalgic moment. So, yeah, I mean, I agreed when Jason suggested them originally. I don't know if I said it out loud, but at least in my head, I agreed. So I think it's a good choice.
Yeah. Harry, one thing that's been a little bit of a surprise, I think we talked about it here, is now with TNA's relationship with WWE, that we haven't seen much of, if any, Hardys on WWE proper, right? I mean, they've popped up on NXT, but they are a draw. And, given that their tag team division, WWE's, could certainly use a boost. I'm a little surprised. And the door's not closed on it, but you would think Hardys, Usos, just take your pick. But that there would be some marquee value in one last Hardys WWE run.
Well, wasn't that several WrestleManias ago? They made a surprise comeback, and that was so well received.
That was now, I think next year will be 10 years, I think.
10 years.
or 9 years. I think it was 2017, yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago. I think WWE doesn't want, they don't like to revisit those things maybe. And at their age, maybe they don't even see them as equal par or in the same league as tag teams that they already have. And maybe they're afraid that any of their talent may look diminished going against these 50-year-old guys, although these are the most youthful looking 50-year-old guys I have ever seen. I'm amazed. So I guess the young bucks are looking into their future and breathing a sigh of relief.
Yeah. I mean, Jeff looks like Jeff. Matt has fluctuated over the years, and now probably looks as healthy and well conditioned as I can remember in a long time. I mean, 50-something-year-old Matt looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and can go. So it's been a pleasure to watch. I wonder if WWE's maybe a little, once bitten, twice shy.
I think that's what it is. I mean, there's been some bridges burned there, especially, look, we all remember, right, how Jeff exited the company last time. He literally just walked out of the ring during a house show match and left the building in the middle of the match.
Yeah.
I have never heard that happening in my life. And so I can only imagine that they are not super high on the Triple H list of favorite guys. And I think that's probably part of it. And even the fact that they were in NXT is probably a small miracle.
Yeah. But you'd think the Hall of Fame is a given for them and all that. So, and it's just been sort of, nostalgia, but as I said, they could still go. So it's been fun to watch. We've got 99 other teams on the list. And again, I got to say, in some cases, it was, an effort to find really worthy. It's and I don't want to crap on my own list too much. But there's a drop off, certainly compared to some recent years where you've had a really strong top 5, top 10, and beyond. And it is, I think the one thing that's different about this list than some of the other lists we put together is that it is less a reflection of the wrestlers themselves and more a reflection of, at any given time, how much is tag team wrestling a priority for bookers. And we're just in an era where it's not, for the last few years. And with WWE and AEW and even, TNA and New Japan in recent years have had years where it's been a big priority. And they've, we saw WWE headline a night of WrestleMania with a tag team championship match a few years ago when they had the Usos versus Kevin Owens and I was going to call him El Generico as Sami Zayn. But from that to what we had this year, where it was just sort of pass the belt around, DIY gets the shot, and the Wyatts and kind of everybody, you'd have Finn Balor and McDonough have the title for months on end and never defended. I mean, I think they had a several month reign that had one defense or something like that. So it just wasn't a thing this year. and I think that affected our list. But nevertheless, it is what we consider the 100 top tag teams in wrestling. Check it out. As I mentioned, also a feature on Mike Santana. I got to interview him just a couple days after losing his title, and it really came through in the interview that he was none too happy about it. We were actually supposed to do the interview the day after he won the title, and he no-showed the interview. Legit. In the long run, I think it made the feature more interesting because we got to dig into some of his frustrations and how he deals with them. This is a guy who is an admitted he has a history of substance abuse, and he'd be the first to say it. And this was a challenge for him personally, and how he dealt with it, I think, speaks to how the strides he's made in the last few years. So really inspirational guy. I guess our next big thing is the year-end awards, and I don't cast a vote, but if I did, I think I'd be voting for Mike Santana for most inspirational wrestler. I really liked talking to him. Anyhow, and a lot more, PWI-online.com, the place to go. Still time to get to the wrestling fan in your life a subscription for Christmas, Hanukkah, what have you. Also, we've got merch, we've got back issues, bundles, all of it over at PWI-online.com. All right, guys, let's talk some current events. We've been talking all year about Cena's farewell run, and now we have finally said farewell, and super controversial fashion, I think, fair to say. I've got a lot of thoughts on it. But why don't we go to Harry? We all know now he taps out. He to Gunther in his final match, and about as a downer as I can remember, certainly since Undertaker's streak being ended by Brock Lesnar. I mean, that's what it was reminiscent of. Some people have made the comparison to Ivan Koloff beating Bruno Sammartino, but the whole building just went to a hush, and I think it was both sadness and disappointment, but also surprise. I don't think anybody could have predicted that,
except me. I fairly anticipated that he was
a tap out
going to lose. Tap out, I wasn't so sure about,
yeah.
But I was pretty sure he was going to lose. Considering Brock Lesnar's dominance over him earlier. So Gunner, who has, will have more invested in him than even Lesnar, for the future. I didn't see Cena beating him at all. He was just too formidable opponent to be chosen for the final opponent. Like, if we wanted a feel-good victory, it would have been The Miz or somebody else, and we might have even forgiven that to have a feel-good match. I liked the match. I liked the tap out because it was believable.
Okay.
I didn't think it was believable that Cena would win. In fact, I didn't like how anything unfolded afterward, because he has made it painfully aware he's passing the torch. And that's always a curse to the person who wins. And this goes back to Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. When the loser is in the ring, didn't happen literally in this case, but raises the winner's hand, and they kind of make it more about them than the winner. The best, most professional way for him to go out would have been to kind of roll out, drop to the arena floor, and a couple guys help him to the back. And maybe he does his signature this at the end. But the fact a whole party erupted, and Triple H comes out, Stephanie comes out, and then in a relatively short time, he was over the aches and pains of this grueling match.
Yeah.
He did the sweeping Broadway bow, and he did everything but tap dance and soft shoe afterward. And I don't think that's what's best for business. It was a letdown to the people in the crowd that he lost, and you saw the shocked look on all those faces. But I think reaction at home might have been a little different.
Yeah, and I think you combine that, and I don't know what this was, but it's certainly what a lot of people saw. You combine that with what certainly looked like a big smile on John's face when he tapped out, right? Which one of the things that made it even that weirder, it was so sort of like, we're putting on a show here.
Melodramatic John.
Where I get the tap out with a big smile. And I don't know that it was a smile. I mean, I've gone back and I thought, like, is it just his face kind of contorted because of
No, he
pressure?
confirmed it. He was talking about it in detail. He was saying like he meant it to be like he was just letting go, like peaceful.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the interview with
like Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars, basically.
And it does give me a different perspective on what he was going for and a different appreciation. But this is where I think, like, good editors come through, right? Because, and it's happened to me at PWI and at my day job. You're writing something that you think is so profound and so deep, but you don't have the perspective of an outsider, and so it takes somebody else to look at your idea and say, I'm not sure this is really landing the way you think it's landing. And hearing John Cena talk about his vision for this finish, I get what he was going for. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it worked, right? And we can say in retrospect, maybe I have a different understanding of it, but it's sort of like when you eat a meal and you don't like it, right? And maybe, after the meal or 6 months from now, you find out the circumstances that the chef was under and where the food came from, and you have a new appreciation of, like, a different tastes, and that's all fine. But it doesn't change the fact that in that moment you didn't like the meal; it tasted bad, and that's just it. It's like you could explain it all away, but what I know is that moment was an incredible bummer for everyone, including fans that paid a ridiculous amount of money to be in that building. And, as much as WWE talks about this being the business of putting smiles on people's faces, they failed. That was just as depressing and as much a downer as I can imagine. And you don't get it back, right? I mean, there's no do-over.
No, and by the way, that smiles thing, they haven't said that in a long time since a certain person was running that company who, for all his faults and flaws, and they are many, at least understood that. And I think that's not understood anymore. Here's my thing. I got a lot of thoughts on this. Is this my chance now, Al?
Yeah, I've had it.
Well, first of all, I never thought in my life, I'm the old school fan, so I'm going to give my old school perspective. I never thought we would see again in the modern age a finish where people are crying and adults and children are crying, silence over the crowd, even in an age when everybody knows that it's scripted. I was very depressed when they started booing Triple H, just because, again, it takes me right out of it that we're booing the writer of the show, whatever that is. Here's the thing. I think at the end of the day, sometimes all these people that talk about booking psychology and old school traditions, they forget that this is supposed to be entertainment for people. This is supposed to be an entertaining show. And if you're telling stories, sometimes it's okay for the story to have a happy ending. And I feel like this is something that we've lost sight of more and more in wrestling. Like, everybody thinks everything's got to be like Dusty Rhodes chasing Harley Race or Ric Flair. And that's one way to tell a story. It's not every way. Here's the thing. I keep seeing, I'm the first one to talk about wrestling traditions and stuff, but I keep seeing this thing, which I think is really misinformed online, of people going, well, this is the tradition. This is the way you go out on your back. And I'm like, look, that was never true. That was something that Vince McMahon made up in 1997 to cover the fact that he screwed over Bret Hart. Now, and everyone has aped it since. Now, what I mean by that is, yes, absolutely, there were times that they did that. But it was not a hard and fast rule that this was the only way to do it, especially not when it's like a retirement match or a big final match for an adored legend who's staying with the company. He's not going anywhere else. Like, they would do that when a guy was leaving a company because you're not invested in him anymore, so you might as well use him to get somebody else over.
Maybe Nash versus Shawn Michaels at
right.
Nash's last match.
But there's ones on either side. Roddy Piper won his retirement match Bruno Sammartino, which is a great parallel to this guy because he's sticking around, or he was gonna stick around. He's a legend. He's going on the way out. Undertaker lost his last match. I mean, Vern Gagne famously with Nick Bockwinkel. It's like, it doesn't always have to be, especially the retiring legend. And look, I think that, yes, I'm not blind. And I do think so far that this has really benefited Gunther. I mean, he has insane heat now, and he absolutely has become the number one heel in the company. However, and this is where I know this is the point of disagreement, I don't think it was worth it. I don't think it was worth it to flush down the toilet this like once in a lifetime opportunity for a moment, especially for fans like Al. You said, let's not forget this. These people paid through the nose to be there. And you have to take that into consideration. I'm sorry, if you're going to charge people that much money to be there, you're under an obligation to entertain those people and to give them things that they want to see. And so that's where I stand on it. You know, I understand why they did it. It was, I wouldn't call it a disaster, but I think it was the wrong call.
Yeah.
Do you think Gunther was the best opponent?
Well, you know, I thought about that. I thought about what you were saying, Harry, even beforehand. I thought, well, they probably shouldn't have had Gunther in there with him. I agree with you. I don't think it should have been a total, you know, telegraph thing. Like if it was the Miz, we would have all seen that coming.
It could have been the AJ Styles match that we saw.
Right. It could have been. It could have been somebody that's worthy of him, but somebody that we could see him beating.
Yeah,
and I agree with that. It probably never should have been Gunther. You know, I was thinking maybe, you know, they would do the Rocky IV thing where, you know, Gunther is Drago and all that. We talked about that, but you know, in hindsight. It probably would have been better to have somebody different in there, especially because they did paint themselves into a corner, right? What are they going to do? But Al, we talked about this, and you brought it up, Harry, how he just lost to Brock Lesnar. Now, my take on that is I think that makes it even more of a head-scratching decision. It's like, what kind of a retirement tour was this?
He also just lost to Dominic at Survivor Series.
He lost the title to Dominic. He lost another title to Cody. He had this heel turn, which was so mishandled. Even though I thought it was going to be great, it was not. Then he gets killed by Brock Lesnar. Now he loses to Gunther. I mean, what was the point of even doing this? You know?
Well, you know, to that point, the whole debate about, you know, whether it's the right thing to go out on your back and put a guy over, it sort of like skips the point that, like, well, you address that with the booking, right? And I agree that once you have made the decision to have John Cena versus Gunther as the final match, now you're kind of in this conundrum. Like, are you going to have John Cena beat Gunther, who is younger and you could say is, you know, kind of the future of the company and all that? And so, Harry, I also thought it was very, at least possible. And I was watching the match with my kids, and they were thinking, "There's no way John Cena loses." And I thought, "There's a very good chance that he loses because it's Gunther." And you've got to
he's lost so many times.
Yeah, and you got to think about Gunther at WrestleMania. What's next for him? But my thought was, and I do think that there's a way you can kind of have it both ways. First of all, there's the whole issue of what he tapped out to, right? So it would have been one thing if it was an ankle lock or an arm bar or something where you're in excruciating pain and your bone's going to snap. The option for John Cena was, you're going to go to sleep, right? Good night, everybody. And that's it. It's how Steve Austin was made in his match with Bret Hart, which was a submission match, by not submitting, but just going out. So, but I also get that doesn't send the same message, and you don't get to have Gunther gloat. I made him tap out. And I do think after watching, it is the one place where I have to acknowledge that maybe I was wrong. And you touched on it. You know, I thought Gunther would have the wrong kind of heat on him for beating John Cena. And then watching the next night, I think it was very much the right kind of heat, you know, and he was super hot. I think he did a great job with that smile and saying he tapped out like a bitch. I thought it was pitch perfect. And I'm really interested to see where it goes from here. And so there is part of me, and this is where you just got to kind of weigh it for yourself, Brian, is like, you talked about it. Is it worth it? It's like, well, what if Gunther catches fire like he wouldn't have otherwise? And Gunther's been a top guy for a while, but we've talked about how he's never really gotten to the top. And does this do more for him than anything else would have? And ultimately, is it, even if you could make the argument that creating Gunther as a top guy is not as important as protecting John Cena and that legacy, I get John Cena at the end of the day just being like, well, I don't care. I mean, like it means more to me that you create a top guy.
Let's not forget here.
Triple H has to. I get that Triple H has said this from day one. Like, when you're John Cena, you've earned the ability to do whatever you want. That's fine to an extent, but at the end of the day, this is your company, and you can't just let even a John Cena do whatever he wants, because you've got fans, you've got shareholders.
Let's not forget, you're talking about making Gunther a top guy. It's not like he's been plucked out of obscurity. I mean, he's a former world heavyweight champion. He's been booked incredibly dominantly. You could probably count the amount of TV matches he's lost on one hand, or maybe need like one more finger. The guy is really well protected and strong, and he's been in many main events. And I don't think it's like, okay, well, now he's even bigger, yes, than he was before. But again, like I said, why would we sacrifice the farewell of John Cena for that? I don't see the upside. It's almost like it's this thing of, well, we're trying to do the old school thing, and it's just by people that don't understand even what the old school thing is, to me anyway. I mean, could you imagine, we're going to have Bruno Sammartino will have his retirement match against George the Animal Steele at the Meadowlands? And don't forget, because some people were saying, well, George Steele was a comedy wrestler. Not in 1981. He was a top guy. Harry, he was main eventing with Bob Backlund. He was a serious contender. Now, can you imagine they have the match and George Steele goes over by submission and Bruno taps out? Well, that's the end of Bruno's career.
A riot in New Jersey.
Right. 45 years later, we'd be going, why did they do that? It's weird to me, this kind of fake old school nonsense that I keep seeing online.
And so many people never got a quote final match.
Right.
That's like 70 sitcoms. They were never even told when there would be a final episode. They just fade out.
I know.
I do think there are all these factors, and they're all legitimate, and you put them all down like on the ledger. Creating Gunther versus protecting John Cena's legacy versus this versus that. I do think one thing we've touched on in the end of the day has to come first and has to be considered above all things. And that is, ticket buying fans. And I was thinking about going at some point, and the lowest tickets that were available were something like $500, for the worst seat in the house, times 4 for me and my wife and 2 kids. We were out of it, and people were front row. So what did those people pay? Everybody on the floor. I mean, you're talking thousands upon thousands of dollars. What was the gate for the building? I don't know if it's come out, but it's in the several millions of dollars. And as you touched on, I mean, imagine, Kiss doing their last show and refusing to play, Rock and Roll All Night or something like that. It's like, no, you're doing this for these people. It's the only reason that this is even a thing, right? It's like, and what do these people want to see? And it's one thing when you're telling a story with several chapters, it's okay to break people's hearts on one night, knowing that you're going to get it back. You'll get them back at a different night. But this was the end, and you don't ever get it back. Well, why don't we talk about that? Are we all convinced this is truly, truly the end? Because, the running joke we've got in our house is, Cena's going to be in the opening match of the next Saudi Arabia crown jewel event, when they offer him $10 million for one match.
Well, Harry, I don't know if you wanted it.
Well, I hadn't really considered it till now. I really took him at face value that this would really be his final match. And
I'm sure he believes it. Now
this year-long goodbye, I could see where in his mind the story of his career is important and his word is important, and he may not come back. But we even saw Shawn Michaels come back, so these things happen. I can't say never, ever. I would say 60-40 against.
Yeah. I'm sure he doesn't plan to. I mean, I think it's just a matter of does some time pass and you miss it and you're feeling.
Plus, he's got the acting career.
Yeah. But you think about remember Mick Foley. We'll be talking about Mick Foley in a little bit, but remember his final match where he was as sure as anybody and came out the next month.
Yes.
for WrestleMania.
Well, that's the thing. Most of these retirement matches we've been talking about, the people did come back. Bruno came back. Roddy Piper came back. Ric Flair, who he never came back in WWE, but he wrestled other places after that. So many. I mean, Austin. I mean, did you ever think how many years later he'd have another match? So
in Austin's defense, he never said it was his last match.
That's true.
He stopped wrestling. Yeah.
That's true. I think that Cena will probably wrestle again at some point.
Okay.
I do. I think at some point, even if it's just like a one more match thing, I don't think he's coming back for a run. I don't think it's going to be like a Shawn Michaels thing where he comes back and has another Hall of Fame run. I don't think that's happening. I think he'll come back. He'll have a big, like, one more match kind of thing. I could completely see that happening. It's just the track record of wrestling. It's like very rarely is the last match really the last match,
Yeah. Harry, now having all this in the rear view mirror and, so much made last Saturday night of him being the greatest of all time. How much truth is there in that? And I asked this question after Hulk Hogan died. Mm-hmm. If not that, what is like the right superlative for John Cena? Well, he's the most.
I really respect John Cena. I think he's more like the GOAT, greatest employee of all time. And you have to really have your hats off to his longevity and year in, year out, big match John. But he didn't wrestle for other big league companies and have to prove himself all over again or be thrown in and survive. Not like the territorial days where you had to keep getting over in different places. So maybe it's because my age, I still feel like someone like Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, Rock might be a little bit above him slightly.
Yeah. I've even before he was retiring, I have said that, and I know you love Mount Rushmore, Brian, but John Cena, is absolutely on mine when it comes to WWE stars, and I'd have Bruno, which he's almost never makes the list, but if you have any sense of history, it's there's no question that he should be on that list. Hulk Hogan, Austin, and Cena. And
I think I would agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, above Undertaker, above The Rock, Cena. What Cena doesn't have that all those others have is being the top guy during a really hot period. I mean, he was he really didn't turn the business around, but he was longevity. And he might have more than all of them, except maybe Bruno. But I mean, his run.
It's really close.
Almost 20 years.
Yeah. It's very close because, Bruno stepped away here and there. But I mean, you're talking like at least 18 years where he would have to be considered the top draw that they had. And with Cena, it's pretty damn similar, maybe a little bit less. But here's the thing with Cena, and I think I've said this before on here, and I know this is maybe an obscure reference to people who are younger or not from the New York area, but to me, he's the Don Mattingly of WWE.
Who just got passed up for the Hall of Fame again.
Yeah, it's very take nothing away from Don Mattingly. He's one of the all-time great Yankees, but he was the best Yankee during probably the worst period in Yankees history. And right before he came in, they were winning World Series, boom, 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 boom. And right after he retired, much to his chagrin, they went right back to winning World Series. And I feel like that's Cena. He came in after the Attitude Era petered out. He was really hot. He was their top guy during a downtime, a little bit like Bret Hart, but not on a I would put him on a higher level in terms of a draw. And then as soon as he went to part-time, all of a sudden it heated up again with Roman Reigns and everything and got huge. the biggest it had been since before Cena. And, I think that's pretty clear to me, but it's not to take anything away from him because he put that company on his back there for those years, and he deserves all the credit in the world for that.
And I remember more than maybe any wrestler that I can remember, the difference at a show whether Cena was on it or not was huge. I mean, if Cena was on the show, building would be largely empty. If Cena was on the show, you'd sell a ton of tickets. I mean, he was a draw in every sense of the word. And where I think he gets a little bit of a bad rap is the whole, he can't wrestle thing. And I think Cena developed into a really good wrestler. And I think he pretty much shaped the modern WWE main event style, for better or for worse. Some people don't like that style, but it really is the Cena style. And we saw it in the second half of his run this year with a ton of great matches, including the Gunther match, which was really a lot of fun, up until the finish.
The match against Cody at SummerSlam.
Fantastic.
Was terrific.
Yeah. And against AJ this year, against Logan Paul, he had a bunch of terrific matches.
Yeah.
The great matches he had were against guys who, it's too much to say they could carry him, but he did need some help in there. I mean, it's no coincidence that like against Randy Orton and some others, it didn't work as well. But is there one match in particular that you guys will remember most from this run? The AJ match was really special, I thought.
Well, it depends what reason you'd be remembering it for.
Yeah, sure. You remember for the worst WrestleMania main event in 30 years.
I think the one that'll be most remembered is remembered for being bad. I mean, the WrestleMania main event with Cody Rhodes, it might have been the worst WrestleMania main event of all time. It's at least on the short list.
It was really bad. I don't know if it was the worst. I mean,
on the short list. Come on. I mean, But as far as like a really, really good match, I would say probably the SummerSlam Cody match.
Right.
They really did. I don't know if it's going to erase the memory over time, but they really did make up for how badly they had messed up before with a really, really great match. And I think the Logan Paul one is a close second. I have to say, I thought that he got the best. It's the best Logan Paul match I've seen. Not that, and he's very good, but it's the best match I've seen him have.
Yeah.
I agree. I think the Cody match at SummerSlam was his best one. And I think, well, like a lot of people, I was not a fan of the heel turn because it was kind of inexplicable. And his overacting, over dramatic facials during the moment it happened when he kicked Cody below the belt. And I was disappointed in the WrestleMania match. And you remember there was a lot out there. Well, he turned heel because he can't wrestle his old style. He needs a lot of help. He's got to have to take a lot of shortcuts. And I kind of fell into that line of thinking, well, maybe that's what's going on with Cena. Like he can roll out of the ring. He can catch his breath. He can do these heel stalling tactics so he can keep pace. But then I watched SummerSlam and he blew my mind. I thought, well, maybe he just lured us into this thinking that his skills had deteriorated, his stamina had deteriorated, but then he goes and has this marathon match against Cody. And I think that's why that stands out, because I was not expecting him to hang in there for so long during that match.
I think there's a little bit of truth in both of those things. And I do think he just wasn't up for it earlier in the year. And I don't know if it's ring rust or what have you. But I think he just got better as the year progressed, and he got more ring time in, and he got kind of his sea legs from under him, because the Cena we got in the second half from an energy level, from a wind level, his stamina was a different person than earlier in the year. But anyhow, whatever our thoughts, a legend in every sense of the world, a Hall of Famer in any Hall of Fame, and really one of the greats. So kudos to him on his retirement, and thank you. I mean, 3. Right, the record for PWI 500 number ones.
Yes.
Who knows how many times he's been on the cover? The first PWI 500 I worked on that I have framed, seen on the cover. So certainly has been important to our business. So salute to him. Real quick, and we're running later than I thought, but did want to talk about. We mentioned Mick Foley. He's been in the news of all people to be in the news of last week. Mick Foley has been one of the biggest headlines. And I realized what a big story it was when my day job reached out to me on a day off and saying, we're doing a story about, Mick Foley. Do you have any context? Him being a Long Islander. And I was kind of surprised, like how big a story of this became. And in short, Foley issued a statement earlier this week. I think as a lot of people, as most people, disgusted by President Trump's remarks about the death of Rob Reiner, and saying, it was the final straw for him, and he doesn't want anything to do with WWE. Said he was going to let his Legends contract expire, and then essentially will be doing no business with WWE going forward. I have a lot of mixed views on this. I'll go ahead and say them. I first of all, from where he's coming from, I totally agree and sympathize. Try to be objective here, but I think it is okay to say that the president's remarks were disgusting and unpresidential, and I think on both sides you're hearing that. And certainly Foley is entitled to do whatever he wants and work with whoever he wants, and that's all fine. I think some of that outrage is maybe a little misdirected. We've talked about here. He talked about WWE coddling Donald Trump. I don't know if I see that. If anything, I think WWE, with some changes in recent months, and we've talked about this, but I think they've made a big effort over the last year to try to keep their distance, at least publicly, from Donald Trump. Despite
I don't agree at all. I mean, he's on their television, and they showed film of Triple H.
Yes, right. This year being a change, but we also talked about that there is the reality that, he's the president, and WWE officials were invited to the White House, and Linda McMahon is I guess, and part of my problem is him throwing the whole company and its employees under the bus. And I don't know if it was in this statement or another one, but he said something. I don't know how anybody could stand by, much less stand beside him. And if he's specifically talking about Triple H or Stephanie McMahon or Linda McMahon, that's fine. And so call them out on it. That's fine. But I think it's maybe a little unfair to a lot of the people who work there, who probably are as disgusted as he is. But this is their workplace, and don't have that microphone, and nor would it even have the opportunity. I don't know. I think of somebody, and I won't name names, but there's all kinds of people who I think it is well known in WWE, very much are not Trump supporters, and I think Foley sort of, in one fell swoop, kind of threw them all under the bus, and I was a little perturbed by them. When this is not UFC, it'd be one thing if Trump was in, front row of every show. I think it's a bit much to say that they coddle him. And for better or for worse, the reality is that WWE and the McMahon family have a long relationship with Donald Trump. And I don't know that Donald Trump has any real friends, but maybe the closest thing to a friend might be Vince McMahon, and the McMahon family, certainly predating his political life, and even predating him being a Republican. So I try to keep that in mind when I see some of, when you see Stephanie and Triple H at Mar-a-Lago or something like that. There's part of me that is like, ugh. And there's also part of me like, they've known. Stephanie's known Donald Trump since she was a little girl, so I try to balance those. It's also easy for Foley, who is not a full-time employee. I shouldn't say easy, because it's not. He is going to pay a price for financially, and in some ways there are going to be consequences to what he says. That I think it's great that he walks into that willingly, but it is different than being a full-time WWE employee versus a legend on a Legends contract. I don't know. I have mixed views on it. None of it is to certainly do anything close to defending just the appalling remarks of the president. Brian?
I think that what Mick got across, and I think it made sense to me, and I applaud him for standing on his principles. I think what I took from it was that this was like a last straw kind of a moment. I know that there have been people who've been saying, well, what about all the other horrible stuff that Vince was doing? What about all the stuff that was coming out and that didn't stop you, and all these other things, and Linda McMahon, and I understand that point of view, but I think that this was like for him that one last. It's like the pebble that made the dam explode, and and let's look at this, like you said, Al. I have no qualms in saying this. I mean, the response of Donald Trump to Rob Reiner's murder is not, and his wife's murder is not, the response of any kind of mentally healthy, normal human being. And it is not the response of a good, decent human being. And when that's coming from the leader of the free world, it's very scary. And it is a cause, I think, for legitimate disgust and shock. And for Mick, it was probably a very emotional kind of knee jerk. He quoted Popeye, I stand all I could stand and I can't stand no more. It's like this was the moment where he just was like, all right, F this, enough of this. I'm not going to. He probably has been biting his lip for years, because let me just tell you, Mick Foley is, in my experience, and I'm sure if you guys had any dealings with him, he is probably the nicest, most decent, and genuinely good human being in the wrestling business that I have ever encountered. So it's, to me, I'm sure that this is the culmination of years of moral conflict. Mick Foley also has a family. Mick Foley is also trying to amass wealth and trying to leave something to his kids. Mick Foley, I know, also, I'm sure, foresees a health disaster, unfortunately, in his future at some point. So, yeah, money helps. But I think he finally got, that's real life. That's the real world. But I think he finally got to the point where he said, this is not worth it anymore. And I applaud him for that. I think it was a very principled thing to do, and it's in line with the person that I know him to be.
I would, and I agree. And I do think it's principled. I think, and I'd have to see where he said it. The one part that bothered me again was where he said something to the effect of, "I don't know how anybody at WWE could stand by him." Which, again, if you are literally talking about Triple H standing next to him and Stephanie standing next to it, it's one thing. I think that could be taken to mean anybody who would continue working with WWE, given its relationship with this guy, is in the wrong. I think that's a lot to put on a lot of people in WWE who, it is the biggest wrestling company and they're pro wrestlers, and that's why they're there.
Well, I from what I've heard, and you're right, obviously there's people that work there of all stripes. And from what I've heard from people who work there, though, the company itself as a whole is very much on board with the Trump thing. And
this is an important point, and it's one thing I wanted to explore more, because I don't know what Foley might be privy to that the masses aren't, in terms of how close that working relationship is, and how much that bleeds into their business dealings. Because on air, we but for that footage over the summer that they showed that got a booze at MetLife, the reality is, like, they have, I think, publicly tried to kind of stay away from Donald Trump. We don't see him all over the TV, even though he was involved with WrestleManias. He's in their Hall of Fame. I think they've made something of an effort to publicly keep him at an arm's distance.
And maybe it's because he's also so closely associated with UFC, which is now under the same corporate umbrella.
Yeah.
And there were the rumors of him showing up to Cena's last match, which would have been a colossal mistake. And I don't know if that was even close to happening, but I'm glad that cooler heads prevailed. But I just think, and like you said, I think maybe he is privy to certain things. I know, like people who are there, and look, this is not a new thing per se. I mean, the McMahons have, I don't know how much of a secret this is. I mean, they've always been Republicans, and that's something that I remember Vince McMahon on Monday Night Raw taking shots at Bill and Hillary Clinton 30 years ago.
Right.
So
Trump was not.
What's that?
And Trump was not
right. So that's not a shocking thing to me, but it's just there seems to be maybe a little more kind of brazenness now, and I also think being pro-Republican in 2025 is very different to being the image that it creates is very different to being overtly pro-Republican in 1995. So, like I said, I know people who are there who feel uncomfortable because their own politics and views are not in line with what they feel is the company's direction. And so, I'm sure there's this type of thing is always the tip of the iceberg in a lot of ways. So maybe we don't fully know everything that's going on.
Yeah. I mean, the UFC comparison is a good one, and even more as you point out now that they're all under the same umbrella. But whenever they've got Trump in the front row there, I feel for some of the fighters who I know are as disgusted as anyone, and I get nauseated when they start kind of glad handing him. But there's a fighter, Charles Oliveira, one of my kids' favorite fighters, who won a fight some months back with Trump in the front row, and went outside the cage as you do to shake hands with everybody and skipped right over Trump. And it was a principled stance too. But like, I imagine there's a lot of people like that in WWE that if given the opportunity would skip right over. It's also sort of like there is, and we've talked about this. There is just sort of the awkwardness and the complication of the fact that regardless of who the person is, the office is so important. It's like when the World Series champions get invited to the White House, right? And it happens every year. What do you do? If do you turn down the Kennedy Center honors, right? I mean, Kiss was just inducted. Paul Stanley, notoriously a big critic of Donald Trump.
I didn't even know that. Is that true?
What are you going to do, right? It's tricky.
Well, he and Gene Simmons can't be getting along well these days. Then, if that's the case.
Well, you know what? Gene's criticized him too, and it's actually an interesting comparison because Gene's relationship with Trump was a personal one, especially after The Apprentice. But he's also been critical of his politics. But it's like we're being invited to being honored at the Kennedy Center.
Right.
It is tricky. Like, sure, you could take the super principled stance of I'm not showing up. But Trump was on at an NFL game a few weeks ago, and he was interviewed backstage by the announcers, and it was light. It was about football, whatever. But it's like, I think the complicating factor is that Trump really is like no other president in American history,
right?
Where you can't move aside.
It's not just a political difference kind of a thing, like, oh, I'm not going to go to George W. Bush because I'm a Democrat and I don't like his policies. I know it's not a political podcast. This is in a completely other realm here. This is an unprecedented kind of a president in so many ways that I think the rules don't apply the same way.
But Linda McMahon is a member of the cabinet. It's so tricky. When at her Senate confirmation, I think when you see Triple H behind her, it's like it's surreal.
I know.
But then you think like, this is his mother-in-law. Right. I mean, this is immediate family, and this is a huge thing for his family. So, like, I don't know where he is politically, or I don't know that it matters, but I don't know what a guy. And again, Foley is entitled to take any stance, and I think I hate the idea, and you heard this a lot when Taylor Swift put out her endorsement of Kamala Harris last year. Oh, you're going to lose so many fans out of this, as if that is the reason to do any of this. It's like, how much money it will or it won't cost you. I think it's great that Foley says, I don't care, I'm going to do this. But I do think you have to think about the consequences of throwing a bunch of other people under the bus with you. I mean,
yes.
I can't imagine I don't know. Again, I don't know.
You know what? Maybe he did go a little too far by saying, I don't know how anybody in the company, let's say, could stand by this, knowing that there are a lot of people there that are just trying to feed their families. And, I think he might have misspoke a little bit there, and maybe it's not completely what he meant. I don't know if I'm being too much of an apologist, but, I think he went maybe a little too far in framing it that way, because look, before 4 days ago, he was one of those people. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, I get it.
And somebody who should have, some sympathy in the sense that when he's been asked about Vince McMahon, he's had a hard time sort of articulating his thoughts or his criticisms, in part because his view of Vince McMahon is colored by a personal relationship with him, right? And so I get that, and I think that also has to be considered when you think of Triple H's and Stephanie McMahon's relationship with Trump, and maybe they're diehard MAGAs who are. I can very much believe that's the case, but I do think, like, I have to be mindful of, like, yes, Stephanie has known this guy her whole life. I imagine. Harry, you have weighed in. I don't know if you want to.
I remember on January 6th, the first tweet I saw was from Mick Foley demanding that Trump be thrown out of the WWE Hall of Fame. So this has been brewing for a long time.
Yeah.
So, and I respect anybody who takes a principled stand for what they believe in, especially if it costs them something, like a Legends contract. And I even begrudgingly respect people who are ill-informed, who are outspoken, like Goldberg, when he complained WWE didn't donate to a 9/11 charity after that happened, and turned out he was wrong. And Jesse Ventura has said a lot of misinformed things, because in this society, it's so easy just to fall into the system, just to look out for yourself. So I commend him for that. But at the same time, I understand why WWE is somewhat aligned. I guess Triple H's position is the vice chair on the President's Fitness Council, something akin to that. I guess when you do have an opportunity to be involved in an administration, you have to think of it as not Trump's administration. For now, it's our administration. If you see the opportunity to do good, or maybe even positive press for your company, I see that, because we have to face facts with TKO. A UFC fight's going to happen on the White House lawn or in the ballroom or somewhere. So might have to live with this for 3 more years.
And there is, business does sort of bleed into this in current events, with word of Netflix looking to purchase, and I don't know if it's a done deal, but it's moving ahead, Warner Brothers Discovery, which is, Netflix, the home of Raw, Warner Bros. Discovery, the home of AEW. So, and the word was that Trump was looking to poo-poo the Netflix deal, so Paramount could get it, because the Trump administration now has something of a relationship with CBS and Paramount. So, business does bleed into this in some ways. So I just think it's. I totally agree with everybody who commends Foley for taking a principled stance and speaking up against something that is just absolutely appalling. But I do. It's and I could give myself this advice: you got to be very careful in the words that you put out there. We're coming up on an hour. We're not going to have much time for a year in review or look ahead. But real quick, why don't we just keep it to AEW? Something of a challenging year, and interestingly, I don't think we've talked about it. They ended with a title change, sort of a lot of people didn't expect, taking the belt off of Hangman Page, putting it back at Samoa Joe on their pay-per-view. I think a lot of people were surprised by that. Harry, and now moving ahead, MJF is back into the mix. Your thoughts on where AEW is ending 2025, the decision to put the title back on Samoa Joe, and is that pulling the plug on the Hangman Page experiment, and what are you expecting and hoping from them in 2026?
I was very surprised by that. And in this non-kayfabe era, when you sort of anoint your next guy like an Adam Page and you make him the champion, when you pull the plug on that so quickly, the perception is that you don't have confidence in him. Although apparently Tony Khan is embracing, the idea that the hunt is more important, going back, Dusty Rhodes would do that quick. He would win the title, lose it back very quickly. Sting, Rock, Austin, the same thing. So I see that strategy. But I think on the whole, it looks like you didn't have confidence in your champion. And that's unfortunately also what happened to Mike Santana, although he's likely to regain the title next month. So I think in this era, that can be dangerous.
Yeah. Brian, thoughts on where AEW is closing out 2025?
It's tough because there's two different ways to look at it. Creatively, obviously, I think is a much more subjective thing, but people like what they like. I do think that WC
Freudian.
Wow, talk about a Freudian slip. I do think that AEW creatively, an argument could be made that they had a better year in 2024, that they actually, I think maybe finally breaking away from the Death Rider stuff helped out a little bit towards the later part of the year. I think they had a better 2024 than 2023 creatively.
2025 than 2024.
I'm sorry. I'm batting 1,000 here. Yeah. However, from a business point of view, one thing is I just think there are objective facts here. And when I see Tony Khan talking about how they're bigger than ever, they're doing better than ever, I don't think there's any universe where you could make those kind of comments with a straight face, because by all kinds of business metrics, they're not. I mean, their audience is smaller than it's ever been. Probably the best thing that happened for them is they're on HBO Max now, but we don't know how there could be 5 people watching. I mean, they always talk about how, well, the HBO Max numbers are not available, but I have seen HBO Max numbers made available for other shows. So when I see that it's not made available for them, it makes me wonder. That seems to make me assume that it's not good. So, I mean, creatively, you could argue that they've been doing a little bit better lately, but business-wise, there's no way to argue that. I just feel like they're just getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And now with TNA getting this deal, we've talked about this,
right.
Al. TNA now getting a better TV deal with AMC. I think there is a very real a chance here that they're going to become the clear number 2 wrestling promotion again, and AEW goes down to number 3. I think that's very possible within the next year or two,
especially with the support and help of WWE, the clear number 1. I mean, I think there's a ways to go, and I do think AEW for the moment still has a deeper roster and more stars than TNA does, and better production value. But all that could be addressed, right? I mean, especially with the help of WWE. You worry if that the answer for TNA or what they look for as a quick answer is just become more WWE, and you just does a T, and it's already kind of started happening. Does a TNA big show just become a bunch of WWE guys working with a few TNA guys, and that's a way in the short term to prop up a product, but it doesn't work in the long term. As your Freudian slip there, we saw with the WCW purchase. The thought was, well, we'll keep WCW around, we'll just fill it with WWE guys, and that didn't work. And to some extent, we're seeing that in AAA now, where the AAA shows are just loaded with WWE talent. We'll see. Any thoughts on real quick? If you got to run, Harry, it's okay. But WWE was on such a run, and we've talked about like the latest boom period, and it does feel, in some ways, or does it? You tell me. Was this the year that on the graph, the chart, that the numbers start, that the decline happened? Have they peaked and are they on the decline? From an interest standpoint, it certainly feels that way. I've started seeing some buy 3 get 1 free offers at live events, which was unthinkable some even a year or two ago. So it does feel like that the product is not as hot as it was at least a year ago, certainly a couple of years ago. Is that apparent, Harry?
Well, it isn't the principle that the actual business is always better after creative has already hit its peak and it's on the downslide after it's attracted all those new fans. That's what it felt like this year. It felt like a little bit of air out of the creative balloon. And I guess you can really tie it to two things. Really the ending of the Bloodline storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I thought Heyman had promised us a whole novel full of chapters that I was still looking forward to. And the fact that The Rock really hasn't been involved since Elimination Chamber has really hurt. And also these new production values, and they brought in Mr. Schilling from ESPN. At first, I was really dazzled by the changes that he made, but the changes have remained the same. Like it doesn't feel as dynamic. You know, if I watch another premium live event and I see these sleepy-eyed wrestlers walk up with their latte off the bus.
Thank you, Harry.
Things have become so tired. And don't get me started. Having to throw somebody into the ringside steps and through a table in every main event.
Yeah.
Certain things have become tired cliches that they have to address.
Yeah. Brian, thoughts on WWE's 2025?
First of all, Harry, don't you think it's weird? It seems like only the women drink coffees. I've noticed.
You know what?
I don't know why.
I'm going to be sexist a little bit. How these women can feel flattered, and back in the day when Trish Stratus,
I know
that would have never happened.
You mean like walking in the building with no hair, makeup done?
Rhea Ripley looking
right?
like a
no, I know
girl off down the street. Yeah,
I remember the first time I saw. I'm telling you, I'll swear to you on anything. The first time I saw Trish Stratus backstage when I worked at WWE, I did not recognize her. I'm not exaggerating or being. I literally did not recognize her. But yeah, you're right. That would have been unthinkable. But I wonder, Harry, I think a lot of that was probably Vince more than even the women themselves not wanting to be on TV that way. I think Vince didn't want them shown in that way. But yeah, to get back to your question, Al, I think this is sort of the decline period because, and I think we've talked about this, these big peaks, they don't last very long. It's just a few years. And you're talking 2020 to, I guess we might say 2024 or something is like their hottest. And now they're on the downward, at least creatively, and the business follows eventually, unfortunately. Like you're talking about, Harry, with the Attitude Era, you know, their biggest year was probably 2001 business-wise, but the best of the Attitude Era was already over. And you could even argue maybe in the Hogan years, business-wise, let's say 88, 89 were huge years for them, but creatively they were probably better in 85, 86, 87. Yeah. That's when the audience was attracted. So that seems to be the pattern. Yeah. And I think historically, when we look back, we're going to say this is sort of like the other side of the mountain.
Yes. A lagging indicator, I think is what they call it.
Yes.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. And I agree. I mean, and very often the hottest, creatively, the hottest time is before the big boom, right? And the hope is you've created some fans that are going to stick around even during the down periods, right? Because Cody's not as hot as he was, a year or so ago. As you mentioned, the bloodline is done. Roman is almost never around. The trade-off, you've got CM Punk, who is a big star and he's a regular, and I think it's a boost. And some other guys are in the pipeline in the way of Braun Breaker and some others. But yeah, I mean, just looking ahead to WrestleMania, when you start in your mind to sort of flesh out what this is going to look like, the talk is Cody Roman 3, and that you have to go back to Cody Roman 3, I think maybe says something, that you haven't created those marquee stars that you could headline a show with. And so we will see. But yeah, it does feel like it doesn't make it a bad product, but it makes it a product that is off of its peak, for sure. And the fan part of me, in some ways you end up like rooting for business to go down. So prices become more affordable because, I went to fewer WWE events in 2025 than I probably have any year since I've become a fan. I mean, I went to Mania and I went to SummerSlam. but is that it? That might be all that I did this year.
I was at the first Saturday night's main event. I think
I did too, but that was 2024.
Oh, that means I haven't been to a single show in 2025. There you go.
Yeah.
I think that was my last time. Yeah.
And there also are fewer shows, but when they've come around, whether it's Raw or SmackDown, I always try to go, and I've looked at ticket price, and it's like, get out of here! I'm not spending, $300 for nosebleed seats.
But they've been dropping already. I'm going to be going to the holiday tour show here in Bridgeport.
Yeah,
and I know it's a house show, but still, even the house shows have been astronomical. And I
$60, something like that. I saw buy-in. Yeah.
I gave up, and then because the price, it was like a couple $100 just to get in the building, and I gave it another look, thinking of it as a possible Christmas present. I hope my 8-year-old son doesn't watch this podcast, but they went down to $75 from over 200, the same seats.
The Raw coming to Barclays that they've been building for weeks with Punk and Braun Breaker. I looked the other day; there are tickets for less than $70. And it's buy 3 get 1 free. So that tells me something. Yeah, that absolutely.
They're trying to pay off those UFC debts. That was what this was, really. I think.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you guys. O'Brien, before we get out of here, you want to tell people where they can get the book? Anything else you got going on?
Sure. Irresistible Force: The Life and Times of Gorilla Monsoon. It's been in the top 10 Amazon wrestling books for 3 or 4 months now. It was number 1 for a couple of weeks. I'm selling, you can get it anywhere, but I'm selling autographed copies myself, signed copies. If people want those, they could reach out to me at brianrsolomon@yahoo.com.
Excellent. Harry, you and I this is the time of year where we collaborate. We've got the top 10 stories of the years coming for the year-end awards, and every year you and I fight over who takes what.
Right.
So how are you coming with yours?
I hope Kevin's not listening. I haven't started, but I'm definitely thinking about it.
Yeah.
Well, in the next issue, February 2026 issue of PWI Tag Team issue, I have a tribute to Bob Caudle. He was definitely a voice from my childhood. And I think I started the column off with the words warm and fuzzy, because when I think of Bob Caudle, warm and fuzzy times, just total comfort. A guy who didn't judge too harshly. I think I compared him to the hapless substitute teacher trying to admonish the gym class, and it had no effect. That was like his style.
Yeah. I was sad to hear about his passing, and I'm sorry, his name escapes me. The photographer who's worked with us for years. Yes. So it was so sorry to hear about his passing.
Out of the blue.
Yeah. So certainly a member of the extended PWI family, and we extend our condolences to his family as well. Guys, thank you so much. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you guys, to your families, to all our readers and listeners. Looking forward to doing it again in 2026.
Merry Christmas.
All right.